I drove 3 hours in a storm to reach my sister's house. 3 hours with my hands shaking on the wheel, my eyes burning from tears I couldn't stop, and my chest so tight I thought I was having a heart attack. I wasn't. It was just my heart breaking into pieces too small to ever put back together. My name is Olivia Mercer. I'm 54 years old, and until November 17th of last year, I thought I knew what my life was. I need to tell you what happened that night. I need someone to understand. Started as a regular Thursday dinner at the house, our house, the house I'd lived in for 25 years, raised 2 daughters in, decorated room by room with Warren, the house where I knew which floorboard creaked near the bathroom, which window stuck in summer, which corner of the garden got the best morning light for my hydrangeas. Warren had invited Paige and her family for dinner. Nothing unusual. Paige is my stepdaughter, 40 years old, married to Derek, a corporate lawyer with a smile that never reaches his eyes. They have 2 kids, Lily, 16, and Marcus, 14. I helped raise Paige. When I married Warren in 1999, she was 15, angry at the world, grieving her mother who died of ovarian cancer 2 years before. I braided her hair for prom. I drove her to college orientation. I sat in the front row when she graduated from Duke. I thought we were family. Garrett was there too. He's 36 now, Warren's son from his first marriage. Quieter than his sister, an engineer. He sat at the far end of the table, barely talking, scrolling through his phone between courses. That should have been my first warning. Garrett usually asks about my garden, about Claire and Natalie, about the book club I run at the library on Tuesdays. That night, he couldn't look at me. Claire and Natalie, my daughters with Warren, weren't there. Claire, 26, was in Atlanta for a teaching conference. Natalie, 22, had exams at nursing school in Columbia. I remember thinking I wish they were home. The table felt unbalanced without them. Too many of Warren's people, not enough of mine. We were eating the roast I'd spent 4 hours preparing. Warren's favorite, with rosemary potatoes, and that gravy recipe his mother taught me 3 months before she died. I'd used her actual handwritten recipe card, stained with decades of cooking. It was in my apron pocket, where I always kept it when I made that dish. A small ritual, a way of keeping her close. That's when Paige cleared her throat. "Dad," she said, setting down her fork with a precision that made my stomach turn. "We need to talk about something important." Warren looked up. He was 71 then, still sharp, still the man who'd built a real estate empire worth $2 billion from a single strip mall in 1982. But lately, he'd been tired, blood pressure issues. A stent put in 8 months ago. I'd been monitoring his diet, his medication, his stress levels. I'd been taking care of him, like I'd done for 25 years. "What is it, sweetheart?" he asked. Paige glanced at Derek. He gave a small nod, and then she looked at me, not at her father, at me. "I've noticed some things," Paige said. Her voice was calm, rehearsed. "About Olivia." The room went cold. I could feel it. Something shifting in the air, like the moment before lightning strike. "Things?" Warren frowned. "What things?" "Strange behavior. Erratic. She's been." Paige paused, tilting her head like she was searching for the right word. "Off. For months now." "I don't understand," I said. My voice came out smaller than I intended. "Paige, what are you talking about?" She ignored me, kept her eyes on Warren. "I found something, Dad, in the bathroom, in Olivia's vanity drawer." She reached into her purse, a Hermes Birkin, $30,000, a gift from Warren for her 40th birthday last spring, and pulled out a small amber bottle, prescription-looking, no label. I had never seen it before in my life. "What is that?" Warren asked. "I don't know yet," Paige said, "but I'm having it tested, and I think—" She took a breath, a theatrical breath. "I think Olivia has been putting something in your food." The silence that followed was the loudest thing I'd ever heard. "That's insane," I said. I looked at Warren, at my husband of 25 years, the man I'd built a life with, raised children with, nursed through a heart procedure while Paige was on vacation in the Maldives. "Warren, you can't believe this." He was staring at the bottle. His face had gone grey. "Warren," I said again, "look at me." He didn't. "Dad," Paige continued, "I've been worried about this for a while. The way she controls everything you eat, the way she hovers. And your health has been getting worse, not better. Haven't you noticed?" "His health is fine," I said. "His cardiologist said his numbers are improving. I have the reports. I can show you." "The reports you give him?" Paige's eyebrow arched. "Or the real ones?" "Paige." I was shaking now. "I would never hurt Warren. I love him. I've loved him for 25 years. I've given my entire life to this family." That's when Derek spoke, his first words all evening. "Olivia," he said, smooth as oil, "nobody is accusing you of anything. Yet, we just want to make sure Warren is safe. You understand that, don't you? You'd want him to be safe." I looked around the table, at Lily and Marcus, who were staring at their plate, at Garrett, who was still looking at his phone, jaw tight, at Warren, who wouldn't meet my eyes. "Warren," I said, tell them this is crazy." He finally looked at me, and what I saw in his face, the doubt, the fear, the suspicion, broke something inside me that I don't think will ever heal. "Maybe," he said slowly, "you should stay somewhere else tonight, just until we figure this out." "Stay somewhere else?" I couldn't breathe. "This is my home." "It's my home," Warren said, and his voice was different now, harder, the voice he used in business negotiations, the voice I'd only heard him use with strangers. "And I need to think. I need you to leave so I can think." "Warren, please!" "Don't make this harder than it has to be." He stood up from the table. "Garrett, help your stepmother pack a bag." Garrett looked up from his phone. For a moment, just a moment, I thought I saw something in his eyes. Conflict, guilt, But then Paige said his name, sharp and warning, and whatever I'd seen disappeared. "I'll wait in the car," Garrett mumbled and left the room. I packed a bag in 15 minutes. 15 minutes to gather 25 years of life. I took clothes, toiletries, my phone charger. I stood in the bedroom I'd shared with Warren since 1999 and tried to figure out what you take when your whole world is ending. On the nightstand, my wedding ring caught the lamplight. 25 years. I slid it off my finger, slowly, feeling every millimeter, and set it on Warren's pillow. Downstairs, as I passed through the kitchen, I saw the porcelain plate on the counter. My mother's plate, the one she'd given me when I got married, hand-painted with tiny blue flowers. "For your first dinner party," she'd said. She'd been dead for 12 years now. That plate was one of the last things I had of hers. I reached for it. "Leave it," Paige said from the doorway. "That plate stays with the house." I looked at her. At this woman I'd raised, loved, defended to Warren when she dropped out of law school, when she married Derek against everyone's advice, when she asked for a loan of $50,000 that was never repaid. "Paige," I said, "why are you doing this?" She smiled. It wasn't a nice smile. "Drive safe, Olivia. It's starting to rain." She was right. It was raining. Not just rain, a full storm, the kind Charleston gets in November, when cold fronts collide over the coast. Thunder so loud it shook the windows, lightning that turned night into day for split seconds. Garrett was waiting in my car, our car, the Toyota Camry I'd driven for 8 years. He didn't say anything as I got in, didn't apologize, didn't explain, just sat there with his hands in his lap. "You know I didn't do anything," I said. He was quiet for a long moment. Then, "I don't know anything, Olivia. You know me. You've known me for 25 years. I know my sister," he said, "and I know my father, and I know that whatever is happening here, I can't be in the middle of it." "You're already in the middle of it, Garrett. You're sitting in my car." He opened the door. Rain poured in, soaking the passenger seat. "Good luck," he said. And then he was gone, running back to the house, leaving me alone in the driveway of the home I'd built my entire adult life in. I drove. I don't remember most of the 3 hours to my sister Diane's house in Myrtle Beach. I remember the rain, so heavy the windshield wipers couldn't keep up. I remember pulling over twice, because I couldn't see through my tears. I remember trying to call Warren 11 times. 11 times hearing his voicemail. "You've reached Warren Mercer. Leave a message." I remember thinking, 25 years. 25 years of waking up next to him. 25 years of cooking his meals, managing his household, raising his children, smiling at his business partners, attending his charity galas, pretending I didn't notice when he worked late or forgot our anniversary or dismissed my opinions in front of guests. 25 years of being Olivia Mercer, wife of Warren Mercer, and now I was driving through a storm with a single suitcase and $200 in my wallet because my credit cards were joint accounts and I didn't know if they'd still work in the morning. Diane opened the door at 11:47 p.m. She was in her bathrobe, her face creased with sleep, her gray hair loose around her shoulders. She looked at me, soaking wet, mascara running down my face, shaking so hard I couldn't speak, and her expression shifted from confusion to concern to something else, something I didn't expect. Suspicion. "Olivia," she said slowly. "What happened?" I told her. Standing in her doorway, dripping on her welcome mat, I told her everything. The dinner, the bottle, Paige's accusations, Warren's face, the drive. When I finished, Diane didn't hug me, didn't pull me inside. She stood there, arms crossed, chewing her lower lip the way she'd done since we were children. She paused. "That's quite a story." "It's not a story, Diane. It happened. I'm sure something happened. I'm just trying to understand." She finally stepped aside, letting me in. "You're telling me Paige made all this up? Out of nowhere? For no reason?" "Yes, that's exactly what I'm telling you." Diane led me to her living room, the same living room I'd sat in 100 times, Thanksgiving dinners, birthday parties, the day we scattered our mother's ashes. The velvet couch was faded now, a pale green that had once been vibrant. On the wall, a clock ticked 7 minutes slow. It had been slow for years. Diane never fixed it. She sat across from me, didn't offer tea, didn't offer a towel for my wet hair. "Olivia," she said, "I love you. You're my sister, but I need to ask you something, and I need you to tell me the truth." My stomach dropped. "Did you do something? Anything? That might have made them suspicious?" "No," my voice cracked. "Diane, I swear to you, because Warren's health has been bad, and you are the one who cooks for him, who gives him his medication. If there's anything, even something small, something you didn't think was wrong, there's nothing." I was crying again. "I would never hurt Warren. I love him. I've loved him for 25 years. Why would I don't know." Diane's voice was flat, tired. "I don't know why anyone does anything, but Paige called me an hour ago." The room tilted. "She what?" "She called me. She told me you might be coming here. She told me." Diane looked away. "She told me to be careful." Paige had called ahead. Paige had poisoned my own sister against me before I even arrived. I sat there, wet and shivering on my sister's couch, and realized that I had no one. Not my husband, not my stepchildren, not even my own blood. "I need to use your phone," I said. "Mine is almost dead. I need to call Warren." Diane handed me her phone. I dialed our home number. The number I'd had memorized for 25 years. It rang once, twice, 3 times. Then a click, and Warren's voice. Not voicemail, his actual voice. "Diane," he said. "Is she there?" "Warren, it's me. It's Olivia. Please, let me explain." "I don't want to hear it." His voice was ice. "Not tonight. Maybe not ever." "Warren, I didn't do anything. That bottle, I've never seen it before. Paige put it there. She planted it. I don't know why, but goodbye, Olivia." "Warren, please. I love you. I've loved you for 25 years. I gave you everything. My youth, my career, my whole life. You can't just..." The line went dead. I sat there holding my sister's phone, staring at the screen as it faded to black. Outside, the storm raged on. Thunder shook the windows. Rain hammered the roof like fists. And somewhere in Charleston, in the house I'd made into a home, my husband was falling asleep in our bed with my wedding ring still on his pillow, while his daughter smiled in the guest room, knowing she'd won something I didn't even know we were fighting for. I tried calling again, once, twice, 3 times. Each time, the phone didn't ring at all. Warren had blocked my sister's number. I woke up on Diane's couch at 6:14 a.m. with a crick in my neck and the taste of salt on my lips. For 3 seconds, I didn't remember. 3 seconds of peace before everything came crashing back. The dinner, the bottle, Warren's face, the storm, the blocked number. Diane was already up. I could hear her in the kitchen, the familiar sounds of coffee brewing and cabinet doors closing. I lay there for a moment, staring at the ceiling, trying to convince myself that this was all a nightmare, that I'd walk into the kitchen and Diane would laugh and say Warren had called. It was all a misunderstanding. Come home. But when I walked into the kitchen, Diane didn't laugh. She handed me a cup of coffee without meeting my eyes. I called Warren this morning, she said. My heart jumped. And? He answered. She paused. He said I should be careful, that you're not well, that you've been hiding things. Diane, that's not true. None of it is true. I know. She finally looked at me. I know you, Olivia. I've known you for 58 years. You're my sister, and I know you wouldn't hurt anyone. The relief that flooded through me was so intense, I had to grip the counter to stay upright. But, Diane continued, and that single word turned my blood cold, I also know that something is going on, something bigger than a family argument, and until we figure out what it is, you need to be careful. Careful of what? Of everything. She set down her coffee cup. Warren mentioned lawyers. He mentioned protecting his assets. I felt the floor tilt beneath me. Protecting his assets? From me? I don't know the details. I'm just telling you what he said. Diane reached across the counter and took my hand. Her fingers were cold. Olivia, do you have any money? Money that's just yours? I thought about it. Really thought about it. In 25 years of marriage, I had never needed my own money. Everything was joint. The bank accounts, the credit cards, the house, the cars. I had given up my career as a graphic designer when Claire was born. Warren had insisted. I make enough for both of us, he'd said. I want you to be with the kids. I had been with the kids for 25 years, and now I had nothing. No, I whispered. I don't have any money. Diane nodded slowly. Then we need to fix that today. The first thing I did was try my credit card, the joint Amex that Warren and I had used for everything, groceries, gas, the occasional splurge at Nordstrom. I drove to the bank in town with Diane beside me, my hands shaking on the wheel. The teller was young, maybe 25. She smiled at me as I approached. How can I help you today? I need to check the status of my account. Olivia Mercer. She typed something into her computer. Her smile faltered. I'm sorry, Mrs. Mercer. This account has been restricted. Restricted? What does that mean? It means I can't process any transactions for you. You'd need to speak with the primary account holder. I am the primary account holder. It's a joint account. The teller's face went red. I'm sorry, ma'am. The account shows Warren Mercer as the primary holder. And as of... She checked the screen. 6:47 this morning. Withdrawals have been frozen pending further notice. 6:47 a.m. Warren had frozen our accounts before I even woke up. I walked out of the bank in a daze. Diane was waiting by the car, her face tight with worry. Well, frozen, I said. Everything is frozen. For a moment, neither of us spoke. Then Diane opened her purse and pulled out a small roll of bills. I have $6,000 in my savings account, she said. It's yours, whatever you need. Diane, I can't. You can, and you will. She pressed the money into my hand. Consider it a loan. You can pay me back when this is over. When this is over. As if there was an end in sight. As if I could see any path through the darkness that had swallowed my life. We drove back to Diane's house in silence. When we pulled into the driveway, I saw something that made my stomach drop. A black sedan, parked on the street. A man in a dark suit leaning against it, watching us. Who is that? Diane asked. I knew who it was before he even walked toward us. Derek Thornton, Paige's husband, the corporate lawyer with the smile that never reached his eyes. Mrs. Mercer, he said as I got out of the car. His voice was smooth, professional. I'm here on behalf of my client. Your client? You mean your father-in-law? I mean Warren Mercer. He held out an envelope. This is a cease and desist letter. You are not to contact Mr. Mercer, his children, or his grandchildren until further notice. Any attempt to do so will be considered harassment and will be reported to the authorities. I stared at the envelope. You're joking. I assure you I'm not. Derek's smile widened. It still didn't reach his eyes. Additionally, you'll find enclosed a preliminary notice regarding the Mercer family assets. Mercer is beginning the process of protecting his estate. You'll be hearing from his attorneys shortly. His attorneys? What about our attorneys? We've been married for 25 years. We have had, Derek interrupted. You had shared assets. As of this morning, Mr. Mercer has taken steps to ensure that what belongs to him remains his. He stepped back toward his car. Have a good day, Mrs. Mercer. Enjoy your time in Myrtle Beach. He drove away. I stood in the driveway, holding the envelope, feeling like I'd been punched in the gut. Olivia, Diane's voice was soft. Come inside. I spent the rest of the morning on Diane's couch, reading and rereading the documents Derek had delivered. The language was dense, legal, designed to confuse and intimidate. But the message was clear. Warren was cutting me off, completely, totally, as if 25 years of marriage had never happened. Around noon, my phone buzzed. A text from Claire. Mom, what's going on? Dad called. He said you left. He said you've been acting strange. He won't tell me anything else. Please call me. I called her immediately. She answered on the first ring. Mom, are you okay? I'm at Aunt Diane's, I said. Claire, I need you to listen to me. Whatever your father told you, it's not true. I didn't do anything wrong. I know, Mom. I know you. Claire's voice was firm. But Paige has been calling everyone. She says horrible things. She says you were trying to poison Dad. That's a lie. It's all lies. I know. But Mom. Claire paused. I could hear the strain in her voice. Natalie doesn't know what to believe. Paige called her this morning, showed her some texts, some photos. I don't know what they were, but Natalie is. She's confused. She's asking questions. My youngest daughter, 22 years old, being manipulated by her own stepsister. What kind of questions? Questions about your medication, about Dad's medication, about whether you've ever... Claire's voice cracked. Mom, I don't believe any of it. But Natalie is young, and Paige is convincing, and I'm scared that... Ooh. Don't be scared, I said, even though I was terrified. I'll fix this. I promise. But I didn't know how. I didn't know how to fight an enemy I couldn't see, a battle I didn't understand. That afternoon, the texts started. First from Lily, Paige's 16-year-old daughter, the granddaughter I had helped raise, had driven to dance recitals and soccer games, had stayed up with during thunderstorms because she was afraid of lightning. Grandma, is it true you tried to hurt Grandpa? Mom showed me the bottle. She said you were putting stuff in his food. I don't understand. I thought you loved him. I stared at the message for a long time before responding. Lily, I would never hurt your grandfather. I love him. The bottle your mother showed you. I've never seen it before. Someone is lying to you, sweetheart. Please believe me. Her response came 3 minutes later. Mum says you'd say that. She says people who do bad things always deny it. I don't know what to believe anymore. I think I need space. Please don't text me again. Please don't text me again. From the girl I had rocked to sleep as a baby, the girl whose first word was Nana, reaching for me across a Thanksgiving table, the girl who, just 6 months ago, had asked me to help her pick out a dress for homecoming because Mum doesn't understand my style, but you always do. I set down the phone and cried. The next text was from Marcus, Lily's 14-year-old brother. It was shorter, crueler. You're a psycho. Stay away from our family, as if I had never been part of it, as if 25 years of love and sacrifice and devotion meant nothing. Diane found me on the couch an hour later, staring at the ceiling. The tears dried on my face. What happened? I showed her the text. She read them in silence, her expression darkening with each message. These children, she said finally, they've been poisoned, not by you, by Paige. She's turned them against you. She's turned everyone against me. Not everyone. Diane sat down beside me. Not me, not Claire. We're still here. But for how long? That was the question I couldn't ask. How long before Paige's lies reached Diane too? How long before Claire started to doubt? How long before I had no one left? That evening, I made the mistake of checking Facebook. I don't know why I did it. Morbid curiosity, maybe. Or the desperate hope that I'd find something. A message of support. A word of kindness. Anything to remind me that I wasn't completely alone. Instead, I found Paige's post. It was public. 347 likes already. A photo of Warren and Paige, arms around each other, smiling. The caption read, "Sometimes the people closest to us can hurt us the most. So grateful for my amazing father and our beautiful family. Through thick and thin, we stick together. Family, first protecting our own." The comments were worse. "Stay strong, Paige. Family is everything. We're praying for your dad. God sees the truth. Some people are just toxic. Better to cut them out than let them poison everyone around them." I scrolled through the comments, my hands shaking, my vision blurring. 347 people had seen this post. 347 people who thought they knew what happened. 347 people who had already decided I was guilty. And then I saw Lily's comment. "Love you, Mom, and Grandpa. We're going to get through this together." Below it, Marcus had added, "Facts. Real family protects each other. Real family." I closed the app, put down the phone, walked to the bathroom, and vomited until there was nothing left. The next morning, I woke up to find Garrett had called 3 times. At 2 a.m., 2:15 a.m., and 2:47 a.m. No voicemails, no text, just 3 missed calls in the middle of the night. I called back immediately. It rang twice, then went to voicemail. I tried again, same thing, and again. This time, a different result. "The number you're trying to reach is no longer accepting calls from this number." Garrett had blocked me too. But why call 3 times in the middle of the night? Why reach out at all if he was just going to block me the next morning? I thought about it all day. The timing, the pattern. 2 a.m., that was drinking time. That was the hour when guilt and alcohol mixed together and made you do things you'd regret in the morning. Garrett had wanted to talk. Something had been eating at him. And then, somewhere between 2:47 a.m. and the time I called back, someone had gotten to him. Someone had made him change his mind. I didn't need to guess who. That afternoon, I called a lawyer. Not Derek, God, not Derek, but a woman Diane knew from church. Margaret Holloway, 63 years old, divorced twice, with a reputation for taking no nonsense from anyone. I met her at her office in downtown Myrtle Beach. It was small, cluttered with files and family photos, smelling faintly of cigarettes and lavender air freshener. "Tell me everything," she said. So I did. The dinner, the bottle, the accusations, the expulsion, the frozen account, the cease and desist, the social media posts, everything. When I finished, Margaret leaned back in her chair and studied me for a long moment. "You know what this sounds like to me?" she said. "What?" A setup, a deliberate, calculated setup. She pulled a notepad toward her and started writing. The bottle appearing out of nowhere. The accusations coming right when your stepdaughter would need them. The immediate freezing of assets. The legal threats before you even had a chance to respond. She looked up. Someone planned this, Olivia, and they planned it well in advance. But why? Why would Paige do this? That's what we need to find out. Margaret set down her pen. I'm going to request some documents, financial records, insurance policies, anything that might give us a clue about what's really going on here. Insurance policies? Standard procedure in cases like this. When a spouse is suddenly accused of something terrible, it's often because someone stands to gain from their removal. She paused. You said Warren had a heart procedure recently? Yes, a stent, 8 months ago. And he has a significant estate? Over $2 billion. Margaret's eyebrow rose. And who inherits if Warren dies? I opened my mouth to answer, then stopped. I didn't actually know. We had made wills years ago, when the girls were young, but Warren had mentioned updating them recently. He'd handled all of it himself, said he didn't want to bore me with the details. I don't know, I admitted. I assumed I would inherit most of it, as his wife. Assumptions, Margaret said, are dangerous things. She made another note. I'll look into it. In the meantime, I want you to document everything. Every text, every call, every social media post. Screenshot it all. And don't contact Warren or anyone in his family directly, not until we know what we're dealing with. I nodded, feeling for the first time in days like I had some small measure of control. One more thing, Margaret said as I stood to leave. Do you have somewhere safe to stay? I'm at my sister's house. Good, stay there. And Olivia? She met my eyes. Lock the doors. I drove back to Diane's house with Margaret's words echoing in my head. A setup. A deliberate, calculated setup. The phrase felt both terrifying and validating. Terrifying because it meant someone had spent time and effort planning my destruction. Validating because it meant I wasn't crazy. I wasn't imagining things. Something real was happening, and someone was behind it. But who? And why? I pulled into Diane's driveway just as the sun was setting. The sky was orange and pink, beautiful in a way that felt obscene, given everything that had happened. I sat in the car for a moment, watching the colors fade, trying to gather the strength to go inside. That's when I saw the envelope tucked under Diane's front door. It wasn't a legal document this time. It was a regular white envelope, no return address. My name written on the front in handwriting I didn't recognize. I opened it with trembling fingers. Inside was a single photograph. Warren and Paige standing outside what looked like a lawyer's office. The timestamp in the corner read October 15th, 1 month before the dinner, 1 month before the accusation, 1 month before my world fell apart. On the back of the photo, someone had written 3 words, check the insurance. I stood there in the fading light, staring at those words, feeling the ground shift beneath my feet once again. Someone knew something. Someone wanted me to know it too. But who? And what would I find if I looked? I folded the photo carefully, slipped it into my pocket, and walked inside to tell Diane. We had work to do. The photograph haunted me for 3 days. I must have looked at it 100 times, studying every detail. Warren and Paige standing outside what Margaret confirmed was the offices of Southeastern Life Insurance. The date stamp, October 15, 1 month before my life fell apart. Margaret had started making inquiries, but these things take time. Insurance companies don't just hand over policy information, she'd explained. We need to file the right requests, go through the proper channels. A week, maybe 2. A week felt like a lifetime. In the meantime, I was living in a strange purgatory. Diane's house was comfortable enough. The faded green couch had become my bed, my office, my refuge, but it wasn't home. Nothing felt like home anymore. On the 4th day after receiving the photograph, Diane suggested I get out of the house. You need fresh air, she said. You've barely moved in 3 days. Go to the store, buy something, feel normal for an hour. Feel normal, as if that were possible. But she was right. I couldn't hide on her couch forever. So I showered for the first time in 2 days, put on clean clothes, and drove to the Piggly Wiggly on Main Street. It was a Wednesday morning, just after 10. The store was quiet, a few elderly shoppers, a young mother with a toddler in her cart, a stock boy restacking canned goods. I grabbed a basket and wandered the aisles, not really looking for anything specific, just trying to remember what it felt like to be a person who did ordinary things like buy groceries. I picked up some coffee, bread, a carton of eggs, a small bouquet of flowers. Daisies, Diane's favorite, to thank her for letting me stay. The normalcy of it was almost soothing. For 15 minutes, I was just a woman buying groceries. Not a woman whose husband had thrown her out, not a woman accused of poisoning, just a woman with a basket and a shopping list. Then I got to the checkout. The cashier was young, maybe 19, with a nose ring and purple streaks in her hair. She scanned my items efficiently, barely looking up. That'll be 34 72s, she said. I pulled out my debit card, the one linked to my personal account, the one Diane had helped me set up 3 days ago with her loan. I'd deposited the cash myself. I knew there was money in there. I swiped the card. The machine beeped. Red light. Card declined, the cashier said, louder than necessary. You got another one? My face went hot. That's impossible. There's money in that account. I deposited it myself. I don't know what to tell you, Mom. The machine says declined. I tried again. Same result. Maybe try a credit card, the cashier suggested, her voice carrying across the quiet store. I could feel eyes turning toward us, the elderly couple in line behind me, the stock boy, the young mother. I don't have a credit card, I said. My voice was shaking. Can you try running it as credit instead of debit? The cashier sighed heavily, making a show of her inconvenience. She punched some buttons, swiped my card again, declined. Look, Mom, I don't know what to tell you. The card's not working. You need to pay some other way or step aside so I can help the next customer. The next customer. The elderly woman behind me, clutching a bottle of prune juice and a package of adult diapers, staring at me with a mixture of pity and impatience. I'm sorry, I whispered. I don't understand what's happening. Do you want me to hold your items while you figure it out? I looked at my basket. Coffee, bread, eggs, daisies, $34.72. I had driven across the state, lost my husband, lost my home, lost my reputation, and now I couldn't even buy groceries. No, I said, I'll go. I left the basket on the counter and walked out of the store. Behind me, I heard the cashier mutter something to the next customer. I couldn't make out the words, but the tone was clear. Can you believe some people? I sat in my car for 20 minutes, crying so hard I couldn't breathe. When I finally calmed down enough to think, I called the bank. The automated system made me enter my account number, my PIN, my mother's maiden name. Finally, a human voice. Thank you for calling First National. How can I help you today? There's something wrong with my account. My card was just declined, but I know there's money in there. Let me look into that for you, Mrs. There was a pause. Mercer? Yes, Olivia Mercer. Another pause. Longer this time. I could hear typing. Mrs. Mercer, I see here that your account has been flagged. Flagged? What does that mean? It means there's a hold on your funds. It looks like there's been a legal inquiry. A freeze request. A freeze request? From who? I'm not able to disclose that information, ma'am. You'd need to speak with our legal department, and they're only available Monday through Friday, 9 to 5. It is Monday through Friday, it is 9 to 5. It's Wednesday at 10:30 in the morning. Our legal department is currently experiencing high call volume. Would you like me to transfer you to their voicemail? I hung up. Warren. It had to be Warren. He had frozen the joint accounts, but that wasn't enough. Now he was going after the money Diane had given me. The $6,000 that was supposed to keep me alive while I figured out what to do. I drove back to Diane's house in a fog. She was in the garden when I arrived, pruning her roses, her hands covered in dirt and her face peaceful in a way that made me want to scream. How was the store? She asked, not looking up. They froze my account. Diane's hand stilled. What? The new account, the one we set up with your money. Someone put a legal hold on it. And she stood slowly, pulling off her gardening gloves. That's not possible. That account is in your name. Warren has no connection to it. Apparently he does now. We went inside. Diane made tea while I sat at her kitchen table, staring at the photograph again. Warren and Page. October 15th, the insurance office. He's trying to destroy me, I said. Not just divorce me. Destroy me. Leave me with nothing. We won't let that happen. How? He has lawyers. He has money. He has connections. I looked up at my sister. What do I have, Diane? A couch to sleep on and a frozen bank account. Diane was quiet for a moment. Then she reached into her pocket and pulled out a small wad of cash. I went to the ATM this morning, she said. Before you woke up, I had a feeling something like this might happen. She pressed the money into my hands. $800. It's all I could get without triggering any flags. It's not much, but it's something. $800 to survive on, to fight a billionaire with. I started to cry again. That night, I couldn't sleep. I lay on Diane's couch, staring at the ceiling, listening to the clock tick 7 minutes slow. My mind kept cycling through the same questions. Why was Paige doing this? What did she want? Why wasn't Warren stopping her? And underneath all of that, a deeper question. One I'd been avoiding for days. Had I been blind? For 25 years, had I been blind to what was happening in my own marriage? I thought about the early years, meeting Warren at a charity gala in 1998. He was 46, a widower with 2 teenage children, and a real estate empire that was just starting to take off. I was 29, a graphic designer with a tiny apartment and a mountain of student debt. He'd seemed like a dream, charming, successful, attentive. He'd pursued me relentlessly, flowers every day, phone calls every night, a trip to Paris after just 3 months of dating. By our 1-year anniversary, we were married. By our second, I was pregnant with Claire, and somewhere in there, I'd stopped being Olivia. I'd become Mrs. Warren Mercer, the wife, the hostess, the mother, the caretaker. I'd given up my career when Claire was born. Warren had insisted. I want you home with the babies, he'd said. I make enough for both of us. You don't need to work. I hadn't argued. I'd been tired, overwhelmed with a newborn, grateful for the option to stay home. But 1 year had become 2, then 5, then 10. By the time Natalie started kindergarten, I'd been out of the workforce for so long that going back seemed impossible. My skills were outdated, my contacts were gone, my confidence was shot. Warren had noticed. You don't need to work, he'd say whenever I mentioned it. I take care of you, that's my job, his job, as if I were an employee, as if taking care of me were a burden he shouldered out of obligation. And the worst part? I'd believed him. I'd been grateful. I thought he was being generous, protective, loving. I hadn't seen the cage until the door slammed shut. I thought about the money. In 25 years, I'd never had my own bank account, never had a credit card in just my name. Warren handled all the finances. You don't need to worry about that, he'd say. I'll take care of it. I'll take care of it. How many times had I heard those words? How many times had I nodded and smiled and let him handle everything, never realizing that I was handing over my power one decision at a time? I thought about the house. We'd built it together, or so I thought. I'd chosen every paint color, every piece of furniture, every plant in the garden. But when I checked the deed years ago, only Warren's name was on it. Easier for taxes, he'd explained. Doesn't change anything. What's mine is yours. What's mine is yours. Another lie I'd believed. I thought about Paige, the stepdaughter I'd raised, loved, defended, the woman who was now systematically destroying my life. What had I done to deserve this? What had I missed? And then I thought about the bottle, the amber bottle with no label that Paige had pulled from her Hermes bag, the bottle I'd never seen before. Where had it come from? What was in it? And why had Paige had it ready, as if she'd been waiting for the perfect moment to produce it? The perfect moment, the family dinner, the anniversary of nothing special, just a regular Thursday night. Or was it? I sat up on the couch, my heart pounding. Warren had called the dinner. Warren had insisted everyone come. Warren had made sure Claire and Natalie were both unavailable. Claire at a conference he'd encouraged her to attend. Natalie with exams he'd told her not to miss. Warren had set the stage, and Paige had performed. But why? What did either of them have to gain from destroying me? The photograph. October 15th. The insurance office. I grabbed my phone and texted Margaret. I know it was 2 a.m, but I couldn't wait. I need to know about Warren's life insurance policy. Not just who the beneficiary is. I need to know if it was changed recently. And I need to know the amount. Her response came at 7:14 a.m. I've been digging. You're going to want to sit down for this. Can you come to my office at 10? I was there at 9:45. Margaret's office looked the same, cluttered, comfortable, smelling of cigarettes and lavender. But Margaret herself looked different, tired, grim. Close the door, she said. I closed it. I pulled some strings, called in some favors, got a friend at the insurance company to give me an unofficial look at Warren's policy. She slid a piece of paper across her desk. This is what I found. I picked up the paper. It was a printout, unofficial, clearly, with no letterhead or official markings, but the numbers were clear. Policy amount, $8,000. Original beneficiary, Olivia Mercer, spouse, 70%. Paige Mercer Thornton, 15%. Garrett Mercer, 15%. Current beneficiary, as of October 17th. Paige Mercer Thornton, 85%. Garrett Mercer, 15%. October 17th, 2 days after the photograph, 1 month before the dinner. She cut me out, I whispered. Not just cut you out. She made herself the primary beneficiary. 85% of $8 million. That's $6.8 million, Olivia. But how? Warren would have had to approve this. He would have had to sign. Did Warren ever give Paige power of attorney? I thought about it. Years ago, when Warren had his first heart scare, before the stent, before things got serious, he'd had a bunch of legal documents drawn up. Just in case, he'd said. Living will, medical proxy, power of attorney. Yes, I said slowly. He gave her medical power of attorney, in case something happened and I wasn't available. General or limited? I don't know. I wasn't involved in the process. Warren handled it. Margaret leaned back in her chair. If it was general power of attorney, Paige could have made this change herself. Warren might not even know about it. But that's fraud. That's illegal. It's a gray area. If Warren was incapacitated, or if Paige convinced him he was, she could argue she was acting in his best interest. Margaret paused. But here's the thing, Olivia. This change was made on October 17th. Warren's stent was 8 months ago. He wasn't incapacitated. He wasn't even sick. So she forged his signature? Or she convinced him to sign without understanding what he was signing? Or, and this is the scenario that worries me most, she convinced him that you were a threat, that removing you from the policy was protecting himself. I stared at the paper. $6.8 million. That's what Paige stood to gain if Warren died and I was out of the picture. But Warren's not dying, I said. He's healthy. The stent worked. His numbers are good. Margaret looked at me with something like pity. Olivia, she said gently, why do you think Paige accused you of poisoning him? The room tilted. I gripped the arms of my chair. She's not trying to prove you actually did it, Margaret continued. She's building a narrative, a story. Concerned daughter, dangerous wife. If anything happens to Warren, anything at all, you're the first suspect. And if you're in prison for murder, you can't contest the will, you can't fight for your share of the estate, you can't do anything. But I would never hurt Warren. I love him. I know that. You know that. But does Warren know that anymore? Margaret leaned forward. Olivia, I need to ask you something, and I need you to think carefully before you answer. I nodded. Do you want to defend yourself? Clear your name? Prove you're innocent? Go back to your life? She paused. Or do you want to destroy the person who did this to you? I thought about Paige, about the bottle, about the photograph, about $6.8 million and a narrative designed to put me in prison. I thought about 25 years of marriage, 25 years of sacrifice, 25 years of believing I was loved. I want to know the truth, I said finally, and then I want everyone else to know it too. Margaret smiled. It wasn't a nice smile. Good, she said, because I think I know who sent you that photograph, and I think they're ready to talk. She slid another piece of paper across the desk, a phone number, and beneath it, a name, Garrett Mercer. I stared at the name of my stepson, the man who had driven away in the rain, the man who had called me at 2 a.m. and then blocked my number, the man who, apparently, wanted to help me destroy his sister. I picked up the phone. I met Garrett at a diner 30 miles outside of Charleston. His choice, somewhere, no one would recognize us, he said. Somewhere Paige's spies couldn't reach. Spies? The word made me shiver. 3 weeks ago, I would have laughed at the idea. Now, nothing seemed impossible. He was already there when I arrived, sitting in a corner booth with his back to the wall, nursing a cup of coffee that looked untouched. He'd aged in the weeks since I'd seen him, dark circles under his eyes, a nervous twitch in his jaw. The confident engineer I'd known for 25 years had been replaced by someone who looked like he hadn't slept in days, Olivia. He stood when I approached, then seemed unsure whether to hug me or shake my hand. He did neither, just gestured awkwardly to the seat across from him. "Thanks for coming. Thanks for the photograph." I slid into the booth. "I assume that was you?" He nodded slowly. "I should have done more. I should have said something that night, at the dinner. But Paige," he trailed off, staring at his coffee. "Paige what?" "Paige has something on me." He finally looked up. His eyes were bloodshot, haunted. "Something I did years ago. Something that could destroy my career if it came out." "What kind of something?" Garrett was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was barely above a whisper. 10 years ago, I was working on a development project in Greenville. Big commercial complex. Lots of money involved. There was a shortcut in the structural calculations. Nothing dangerous, or so I thought at the time, but definitely not up to code. I signed off on it because the developer was pressuring me, and I was young and stupid and wanted to keep the contract. And Paige knows about this. Paige found out 3 years ago. She was going through some old files at Dad's office. I don't know why, probably looking for something to use against someone, and she found the original documents. My signature, the falsified reports. He laughed bitterly. "She's been holding it over me ever since. Every time I disagree with her, every time I try to stand up for myself or anyone else, she reminds me what she could do. One phone call to the licensing board, and my career is over." I sat back, processing this. Paige had been blackmailing her own brother for 3 years, using his mistake to control him, to silence him, to make him complicit in whatever she wanted to do, including destroying me. "Is that why you didn't say anything at the dinner?" Garrett nodded miserably. "She told me beforehand, said if I interfered, she'd make the call that night. I wanted to warn you, Olivia. I swear I did, but I was scared. I'm still scared." "Then why are you helping me now?" He was quiet for a long moment. Then he reached into his jacket and pulled out a folder. "Because of this." He slid the folder across the table. I opened it. Inside were bank statements, dozens of them, all in Paige's name, or rather in the name of various companies that Margaret's research had already linked to Paige, but the numbers were different from what I'd seen before. Much different. "These are her real accounts," Garrett said. "The ones she hides from everyone, including Derek." I scanned the pages, my eyes widening with each one. Transfers, withdrawals, loans. The numbers were staggering. "She owes $1.2 million, I whispered. 1.4, actually. Those statements are 2 weeks old. Garrett leaned forward. "She's been hemorrhaging money for years, Olivia. Bad investment, failed business ventures, a shopping addiction she hides behind charity galas and designer bags. Derek doesn't know, or if he does, he's pretending not to. Their marriage is a facade. She's been borrowing against everything she can get her hands on, including properties that belong to Dad. Does Warren know? I don't think so. Paige has been very careful. She's been forging his signature on loan documents, using that power of attorney to access accounts he doesn't even know exist." Garrett paused. "But here's the thing. She's running out of options. The creditors are closing in. She needs money. Real money, fast money, and there's only one place she can get it: the inheritance, and the life insurance." Garrett's voice dropped. "Olivia, I don't think Paige is just trying to get you out of the way. I think she's planning something worse." My blood went cold. "What do you mean?" "The accusations, the poison narrative, the way she's been isolating Dad, controlling his information, making sure he only hears what she wants him to hear." Garrett met my eyes. "What if she's not just framing you for a crime you didn't commit? What if she's setting the stage for a crime she's planning to commit herself?" The diner seemed to spin around me. I gripped the edge of the table. "You think she's going to kill Warren?" "I think she needs him dead. Soon. Before the creditors come calling. Before the whole house of cards comes down." Garrett's voice cracked. "And I think she's going to make sure you take the blame." I sat there, stunned, trying to process what I was hearing. My stepdaughter, the girl I'd raised, the woman I'd loved, was not just trying to destroy my reputation. She was planning to murder her own father and frame me for it. "We have to tell someone," I said. "The police. Warren. Someone." "Tell them what? That I have a hunch? That I stole financial documents from my sister?" Garrett shook his head. "Paige is smart, Olivia. She's covered her tracks. The only evidence we have is circumstantial. We need more." "More what?" "Proof. Real proof. Something that connects her to the insurance change, the forged signatures, the plan." He paused. "And I think I know where to find it." "Where?" "Dad's home office. There's a safe behind the bookshelf, the one with the law books he never reads. Paige doesn't know the combination, but I do. Dad told me years ago in case of emergency." Garrett leaned forward. "If there's any documentation of what she's done, original signatures, correspondence with the insurance company, anything, it'll be in there." "Pooh, but I can't go back to that house. There's a restraining order. There's a cease and desist, not a restraining order. It's a civil matter, not criminal. You could face a lawsuit if Warren pushes it, but you won't be arrested." Garrett paused. "And besides, you won't be going alone." "What do you mean?" "I mean, I'm going with you." For the first time since I'd sat down, something like determination flickered in Garrett's eyes. "It's my father's house, too. I have every right to be there. And if anyone asks, I invited you to pick up some personal belongings. We'll go tomorrow night when Dad has his cardiology appointment." Paige always takes him. She likes to control what the doctors tell him. The house will be empty for at least 2 hours. I stared at my stepson, this nervous, guilty, compromised man who had watched in silence while his sister destroyed my life. And now he was offering to help me fight back. Why? I asked. Why now? After everything? Garrett was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was thick with emotion. Because she's not going to stop with you. Once you're gone, once Dad is gone, she'll come for me next. She'll take everything, destroy everyone until there's nothing left. He met my eyes. And because you didn't deserve this, Olivia. You never deserved any of this. You were good to me. You were good to all of us. And I should have said something a long time ago. I reached across the table and took his hand. It was trembling. Thank you, I said. He nodded, unable to speak. We spent the next hour planning. Margaret would be on standby, ready to file emergency motions if we found what we were looking for. Diane would cover for me, tell anyone who asked that I was resting at her house. Garrett would pick me up at 7 p.m. when Warren and Paige left for the appointment. It was risky. It was possibly illegal. It was definitely the kind of thing the old Olivia, the obedient wife, the accommodating stepmother, would never have done. But the old Olivia was gone. She died on a rainy November night, expelled from her own home by people she loved. The woman who remained was someone different, someone harder, someone who had nothing left to lose. The next evening, I stood in the driveway of the house I'd lived in for 25 years, my heart pounding so hard I could hear it in my ears. Everything looked the same. The magnolia trees lining the drive, the wraparound porch with the rocking chairs I'd picked out 15 years ago, the garden beds I planted and tended and loved. For a moment, standing there in the fading light, I could almost pretend that nothing had changed, that I was just coming home from errands, that Warren was inside waiting for me, that our life together was still intact. Then I saw the security camera above the front door. New, installed since I'd left. Installed since. Paige had those put in last week, Garrett said quietly. But I know the system. I can disable it from the panel inside the garage. We'll have about 10 minutes before it resets and starts recording again. 10 minutes to find proof of a conspiracy that could save my life or destroy it completely. We went in through the garage. Garrett punched in the code, still the same, Warren's birthday followed by mine, and the door slid open. The familiar smell hit me immediately. Sawdust from Warren's never-used workshop, motor oil from the cars, the faint sweetness of the jasmine that grew along the back wall. Home. This had been my home. Garrett moved quickly to the security panel, his fingers flying over the buttons. A soft beep, and the red light turned green. Go, he said. I'll keep watch. I moved through the house like a ghost, past the kitchen where I'd cooked 10,000 meals, past the living room where I'd read stories to Claire and Natalie, past the staircase where I'd stood on Christmas mornings, watching my daughters race down to see what Santa had brought. Warren's office was at the end of the hall. The door was closed but not locked. I pushed it open and stepped inside. The room looked the same as it always had. Mahogany desk, leather chair, walls lined with books he'd never read, awards he'd never earned, photographs of a family that no longer existed. I went straight to the bookshelf Garrett had described, third from the left, the one with the law books, and felt along the edge until I found the hidden latch. The safe was small, built into the wall behind a false panel. I entered the combination Garrett had given me, 07151999. Our wedding date, July 15th, 1999. Warren had used our wedding date as his safe combination. The irony was almost too much to bear. The safe clicked open. Inside, I found exactly what Garrett had predicted. Files, documents, a lifetime of secrets that Warren had hidden from the world, and apparently from himself. I worked quickly, photographing everything with my phone. The original life insurance policy, with my name as primary beneficiary. A second document dated October 17th, showing the change. Paige's signature as authorized representative. Warren's signature that even I could tell was forged. Correspondence from the insurance company asking Warren to confirm the change. A response, supposedly from Warren, that was clearly written by someone else. And then, at the bottom of the pile, something I hadn't expected. A letter, handwritten, Warren's distinctive scrawl, shaky but unmistakable. My dearest Olivia, it began. I sank into Warren's chair and read. My dearest Olivia, if you're reading this, something has gone wrong. I don't know what exactly. I've been so confused lately, so tired, so unsure of what's real and what isn't. Paige says I'm getting worse. She says the doctors are worried. She says you've been acting strangely, that I need to be careful around you. But in my clearer moments, I remember you. I remember 25 years of your smile, your kindness, your patience with an old man who never deserved you. I remember the way you held my hand after my surgery, the way you cried when you thought I was asleep. I don't believe you would ever hurt me. I can't believe it. But Paige is so certain, so convincing, and I'm so tired of fighting. I put some documents in this safe. Things I don't entirely understand. Things Paige asked me to sign. If something happens to me, if I die, if I disappear, if things go wrong in ways I can't predict, I want you to find them. I want you to know the truth, whatever that truth is. I love you, Olivia. I've always loved you. And I'm sorry. I'm sorry for not being stronger. I'm sorry for not protecting you. I'm sorry for whatever is about to happen. Please forgive me. Warren. The letter was dated November 10th. 1 week before the dinner, 1 week before Warren threw me out of our home and our life, he had known. Some part of him had known that something was wrong, that Paige was manipulating him, that I was in danger, and he had tried, in his confused and frightened way, to leave me a lifeline. I photographed the letter, then I held it to my chest and cried. Garrett found me there 5 minutes later, still crying, the safe standing open and its contents spread across Warren's desk. Olivia, we need to go. The security system is about to reset. I wiped my eyes, gathered the photographs, closed the safe, put everything back exactly as I'd found it. But the letter, Warren's letter, I kept. I folded it carefully and slipped it into my pocket, next to my heart. We made it out of the house with 2 minutes to spare. As we drove away, I looked back at the home I'd built and lost, the life I'd lived and mourned. I had the proof now, the insurance documents, the forged signatures, the letter. Tomorrow, I would take them to Margaret. Together, we would build a case that would expose Paige for what she was. A liar, a forger, a would-be murderer. But tonight, I would read Warren's letter again, and I would let myself believe, just for a moment, that somewhere inside the man who had betrayed me, there was still someone who loved me, someone worth saving, or someone worth confronting. I hadn't decided which yet. Margaret moved fast. Within 48 hours of receiving the photographs, she had filed an emergency motion with the court, contacted the insurance company's fraud department, and arranged a meeting with the county sheriff. The evidence was damning. Forged signatures, unauthorized policy changes, a paper trail of deception that stretched back months. This is enough to open a criminal investigation, Margaret told me over the phone, her voice tight with barely contained satisfaction. Fraud, forgery, possibly conspiracy to commit murder if we can prove she was planning to harm Warren. What happens now? Now we confront them. All of them. I've arranged a meeting at the house tomorrow at 2 p.m. Warren, Paige, Garrett. My colleague from the sheriff's office will be there as a witness. We lay out the evidence, give them a chance to respond, and then we let the legal process take over. A meeting. At the house. With Warren. I hadn't spoken to my husband in almost 4 weeks. Hadn't seen his face, except in the photograph from the insurance office. Hadn't heard his voice since he'd told me goodbye on Diane's phone and then blocked the number. Will he even agree to see me? He doesn't have a choice. The sheriff is issuing a welfare check based on the evidence of potential fraud and elder manipulation. Warren will be there because the law requires it. Margaret paused. Olivia, I need to prepare you for something. This isn't going to be easy. Whatever happens in that room, whatever Warren says or does, you need to stay calm. Can you do that? I thought about the letter in my pocket, the shaky handwriting, the words that had kept me awake for 2 nights straight. I can do that, I said. I wasn't sure if I was lying. The next day, I drove to Charleston with Diane beside me. She'd insisted on coming. You're not facing that woman alone, and I was grateful for her presence. My hands were steady on the wheel, but inside, I was shaking. The house looked different in daylight, smaller somehow, less like a home and more like a crime scene. There were 2 cars in the driveway, Warren's black Mercedes and Paige's white Range Rover, and behind them, a county sheriff's vehicle. Ready? Diane asked. No, I said, but let's do it anyway. We walked up the front steps together. The door was already open. Margaret was waiting in the foyer, along with a uniformed deputy I didn't recognize. She nodded at me, her expression professional but kind. They're in the living room, she said quietly. All of them, including Derek. Derek, of course, the lawyer husband who had delivered the cease and desist, the man who had smiled while threatening to destroy my life. I walked into the living room of the house I decorated, the house where I'd raised my children, the house that had been my home for 25 years. Warren was sitting in his favorite armchair, the leather one by the fireplace. He looked older than I remembered, frailer. His skin had a greyish tinge, and his hands trembled slightly as they rested on the armrest. When he saw me, something flickered in his eyes. Recognition, maybe, or regret, but it was gone before I could be sure. Paige was standing behind him, her hand on his shoulder, protective, possessive. She was wearing a cream-colored dress that probably cost more than most people's monthly rent, and her expression was carefully neutral, but I could see the tension in her jaw, the tightness around her eyes. She was scared. Good. Derek sat on the couch, a legal pad balanced on his knee, his smile firmly in place, and next to him, Garrett. My stepson looked like he hadn't slept in days. He was sitting as far from his sister as possible, his body angled toward the door like he was ready to bolt at any moment. When our eyes met, he gave me an almost imperceptible nod. We had agreed not to reveal his involvement. Not yet. The evidence would speak for itself. Thank you all for coming, Margaret said, stepping into the center of the room. I know this is difficult, but there are serious matters that need to be addressed. This is harassment, Derek interrupted smoothly. Your client is not under arrest, yet. Margaret's voice was ice, but she will be if she doesn't sit down and listen to what I have to say. Paige's composure cracked for just a moment. A flash of something, fear, anger, crossed her face before she smoothed it away. Fine, she said. Say what you came to say. Margaret opened her briefcase and pulled out a folder. The same folder I'd seen in her office, now thick with additional documents. On October 17th of this year, someone accessed Warren Mercer's life insurance policy and changed the primary beneficiary from Olivia Mercer to Paige Mercer Thornton. The change was made using a power of attorney that was never intended for financial matters. The signature on the authorization form is a forgery. She laid the documents on the coffee table. The original policy, the forged authorization, the side-by-side signature comparison that even a layperson could see was fake. Warren leaned forward, squinting at the papers. What is this? And this is evidence that your daughter has been defrauding you, Mr. Mercer, systematically, for months. That's a lie, Paige said, her voice rising. I would never. There's more. Margaret pulled out another stack of papers. Bank records showing unauthorized transfers from accounts in your name, loan documents with your forged signature, a pattern of financial manipulation that has drained nearly $300,000 from your estate. Warren's face went pale. Paige? Daddy, she's lying. This is all fabricated. Olivia is trying to turn you against me. And then there's this. Margaret pulled out the final piece of evidence, the photograph. Warren and Paige outside the insurance office, dated October 15th. 2 days before the policy was changed. 2 days before you allegedly authorized your daughter to take control of your finances. Warren took the photograph with trembling hands. He stared at it for a long moment, his face unreadable. I don't remember this, he said quietly. I don't remember going to any insurance office. That's because you were likely given something to impair your memory. A sedative, perhaps? Or a medication interaction that left you confused and compliant. Margaret's voice was gentle now. Mr. Mercer, your daughter has been manipulating you, controlling your access to information, isolating you from your wife, making you believe things that aren't true. That's ridiculous, Paige snapped. I've been taking care of him. I've been protecting him. From what? The words came out of my mouth before I could stop them. Everyone turned to look at me. Protecting him from what, Paige? From me. From the woman who cooked his meals and managed his medications and sat by his bed for 3 days after his heart surgery while you were on vacation in the Maldives. Paige's face contorted. You don't know what you're talking about. I know exactly what I'm talking about. I stepped forward, my voice steady despite the storm raging inside me. I know about the debts, Paige. The $1.4 million you owe to creditors who are closing in. I know about the failed businesses, the bad investments, the shopping addiction you've been hiding behind designer bags and charity galas. Paige went white. How? I know that you changed your father's insurance policy because you need him dead. You need $6.8 million to save yourself from bankruptcy, and you need me out of the way so there's no one to contest the will, no one to ask questions, no one to stop you. The room was silent. Warren was staring at his daughter with an expression I'd never seen before, horror mixed with dawning comprehension. Paige, he whispered, is this true? Daddy, no. She's lying. She's been planning this all along, trying to turn you against me. I have a letter, I said quietly. Everyone froze. Everyone. I reached into my pocket and pulled out the folded paper. Warren's letter, the one he'd hidden in his safe, hoping I would find it. You wrote this on November 10th, I said, looking at Warren. 1 week before you threw me out of our home. You wrote that you were confused, that you didn't know what was real anymore. You wrote that Paige was convincing you I was dangerous, but that in your clearer moments, you didn't believe it. I handed him the letter. He took it with shaking hands, his eyes scanning the words he'd written weeks ago. You asked me to forgive you, I continued. You said you were sorry for not being stronger, for not protecting me. Warren's eyes filled with tears. He looked up at me, then at Paige, then back at the letter. I wrote this, he said, his voice breaking. I remember writing this. I remember being so confused, so scared. Paige kept telling me things, showing me things, and I didn't know what to believe anymore. Daddy, Paige started. Be quiet. Warren's voice was suddenly sharp, commanding. The voice of the man who had built an empire, buried under months of manipulation but not destroyed. I need to think. He read the letter again. Then he looked at the documents on the table, the forged signatures, the bank records, the photograph, and then he looked at Paige. Did you do this? He asked. Did you forge my signature? Did you steal from me? Did you try to frame my wife for crimes she didn't commit? Paige's mask finally crumbled, her face twisted with something ugly. Desperation, maybe, or the rage of someone who sees their carefully constructed plans falling apart. I did what I had to do, she hissed. You were going to leave everything to her. Everything. After Mom died, after everything our family went through, you were going to give it all to some woman you'd known for a few years. 25 years, Warren interrupted. I've known Olivia for 25 years. She raised you. She loved you. And this is how you repay her? She's not my mother, Paige screamed. She was never my mother. She was just some gold digger who got her claws into you when you were vulnerable. That's enough. Garrett's voice cut through the room. Everyone turned to look at him. He was standing now, his face pale but determined. That's enough, Paige. Paige stared at her brother. Garrett, stay out of this. No, I've stayed out of it for too long. He stepped forward, his hands clenched at his sides. I know what you've been doing. I know about the blackmail, the threats, the way you've been controlling everyone in this family for years. And I'm done being afraid of you. Blackmail? Warren looked between his children. What blackmail? Garrett took a deep breath. Paige has been holding something over me, a mistake I made years ago. She's been using it to keep me quiet, to make me complicit in her schemes. But I'm done. He looked at his father. I'm sorry, Dad. I should have said something sooner. I should have protected Olivia. I should have protected you. Warren's face crumpled. In that moment, he looked every one of his 71 years, an old man who had been betrayed by the daughter he'd loved and trusted. Paige, he said quietly, I think you need to leave. Daddy, now. His voice was steel. Take Derek and go, and don't come back until you're ready to face the consequences of what you've done. Paige stood frozen for a moment, then her face hardened into something I didn't recognize. Pure hatred, directed at me. This isn't over, she said. You think you've won, but you haven't. I'll fight this. I'll fight all of you. She grabbed her purse and stormed toward the door. Derek followed, his professional mask finally cracking, his face tight with barely suppressed panic. At the doorway, Paige turned back one last time. Garrett, she said, her voice cold. You just made the biggest mistake of your life. I hope you're ready to lose everything. and then she was gone. The room was silent for a long moment. Then Warren spoke. Olivia! I turned to face my husband, the man I'd loved for 25 years, the man who had thrown me out of our home, believed lies about me, refused to hear my voice. Olivia, His voice broke. I don't know how to apologize. I don't know if there are words for what I've done. There aren't, I said quietly. I was confused. I was scared. She made me believe. I know what she made you believe. I sat down across from him, suddenly exhausted. I read your letter, Warren. I know you were struggling. I know she was manipulating you, but that doesn't excuse it. He reached for my hand, then stopped, uncertain if he had the right. I should have trusted you. I should have known, after 25 years, that you would never hurt me. Yes, I said, you should have. We sat in silence, the weight of everything that had happened pressing down on us both. Can you forgive me? Warren finally asked. I know I don't deserve it, but can you try? I looked at him. This man I had loved, this man who had failed me, this man who was looking at me now with tears streaming down his face and 25 years of memories in his eyes. I don't know, I said honestly. I don't know if I can forgive you, Warren. I don't know if I can ever trust you again. Then what do we do? I thought about the letter, about the life we'd built, about the home I'd lost and the woman I'd become. We start over, I said. Not as husband and wife, not yet, maybe not ever, but as two people who are trying to figure out what comes next. Warren nodded slowly. I can do that. I can try. From across the room, Garrett caught my eye. He looked relieved, exhausted, and something else, hopeful maybe, for the first time in years. Margaret cleared her throat. There's still the matter of the criminal investigation. Paige will need to answer for what she's done. I know, Warren said, and I won't protect her. Not anymore. He looked at me. Whatever justice looks like, I'll support it. Justice. The word felt strange in my mouth. For weeks, I'd wanted revenge, destruction. I'd wanted Paige to suffer the way she'd made me suffer. But now, sitting in the living room of my home, looking at the broken man who had once been my husband, I wasn't sure what I wanted anymore. Only one thing was certain. Nothing would ever be the same. And maybe that was exactly what needed to happen. 3 months later, I stood in front of a house I'd never seen before. It was smaller than the Charleston mansion, a 3-bedroom cottage near the water in Beaufort, with a wraparound porch and a garden that needed work. The paint was peeling in places, and one of the shutters hung crooked. But the magnolias in the front yard were blooming, and through the kitchen window I could see the afternoon sun painting the walls gold. What do you think? Diane asked, standing beside me. I think it needs a lot of work. That's not what I asked. I looked at my sister. This woman who had taken me in, believed me when no one else would, lent me money she couldn't afford to lose. She was smiling now, the same smile she'd had when we were children, and she was about to reveal a birthday surprise. I think, I said slowly, it might be perfect. The house was mine, bought with money from the settlement that had taken 2 months of legal battles, 3 mediations, and 1 very public threat from Margaret to expose everything to the Charleston social pages. Warren had agreed to all of it, the house, the accounts, a monthly stipend that would keep me comfortable for the rest of my life. He'd signed the papers without argument, his hand shaking, his eyes never quite meeting mine. We weren't divorced, not yet, but we weren't married anymore either, not in any way that mattered. I'd moved out of Diane's house and into a rental apartment while the lawyers worked out the details. Warren had stayed in Charleston, alone in the mansion that suddenly seemed too big for one person. He called sometimes, late at night, when I imagined the house felt emptiest. I'm sorry, he'd say. I'm so sorry. And I'd listen, and sometimes I'd respond, and sometimes I'd just let the silence stretch between us like a bridge neither of us knew how to cross. I hadn't forgiven him. I didn't know if I ever would, but I'd stopped hating him, and maybe that was a start. Paige was another matter entirely. The criminal investigation had moved faster than anyone expected. Margaret's contacts in the sheriff's office, combined with the evidence we'd gathered, had been enough to secure an arrest warrant within 6 weeks. Paige had been charged with fraud, forgery, and elder financial abuse, felonies that carried sentences of up to 15 years. She'd hired the best lawyers money could buy, or rather, she tried to. It turned out that when your assets were frozen pending investigation and your father had cut you off completely, the best lawyers became whoever would take a payment plan. The trial was scheduled for April. Margaret said the prosecution's case was strong, overwhelming even. The forged signatures, the unauthorized transfers, the pattern of manipulation documented in emails and texts that Paige had been too arrogant to delete. But the best part, the part that still made me smile when I thought about it, was the house, the mansion, the Charleston estate that Paige had coveted her entire adult life. The house she'd been so desperate to inherit that she'd been willing to frame me for murder to get it. Warren had sold it, not because he had to. The settlement had left him with plenty of money. He'd sold it because he couldn't stand to live there anymore. Too many ghosts, he told Garrett. Too many memories of who I used to be. He'd put it on the market 3 weeks after the confrontation. Multiple offers came in immediately. It was Charleston, after all, and waterfront property was always in demand. Warren had accepted the highest bid for $2 million from a tech executive relocating from San Francisco. Paige had found out from the real estate listing. She'd called Warren, screaming, demanding he stop the sale. "That's my inheritance," she'd shrieked. "You promised me that house." Warren had listened to her rant for approximately 30 seconds. Then he'd said, "I promised you nothing. And even if I had, promises made to someone who tried to destroy my wife and steal my money are worth exactly what they deserve. Nothing." Then he'd hung up. I'd heard the story from Garrett, who'd been in the room when it happened. He'd said Warren had looked 10 years younger afterward, lighter somehow, as if he'd finally set down a burden he'd been carrying for decades. The money from the sale had gone into a trust, half for Claire and Natalie, half for charity, specifically organizations that helped victims of elder abuse. Warren's idea, his way of trying to make amends, I suppose, for all the ways he'd failed. Garrett had received nothing from the sale. He'd asked for nothing. Instead, he'd gone back to work, rebuilding his reputation one project at a time. The licensing board had opened an investigation into his old case. Paige had made good on her threat, one final act of spite before the walls closed in. But Garrett had cooperated fully, accepted responsibility, and agreed to additional oversight. His license was suspended for 6 months, but not revoked. "It's fair," he'd told me when I'd asked how he was handling it. "I made a mistake. I should have faced the consequences years ago instead of letting Paige hold it over me." He'd paused. "I'm just glad it's over. I'm glad I can finally be honest." Honest. Such a simple word, such a complicated thing. The grandchildren were the hardest part. Lily had reached out to me 2 weeks after the confrontation. A text message late at night. "Grandma, I'm so sorry. I didn't know. I believed Mom and I shouldn't have. Can you ever forgive me?" I'd called her immediately. We talked for 2 hours about what had happened, about what her mother had told her, about the lies she believed and the truth she was still trying to process. She was 16 years old, caught in the middle of a family war she hadn't started and didn't understand. "Your mother made choices," I told her. "Bad choices. Choices that hurt a lot of people. But you didn't make those choices, Lily. You were manipulated, just like your grandfather was. That's not your fault. But I said horrible things to you. I posted on social media. I know. And it hurt. It hurt more than I can tell you." I'd paused, choosing my words carefully. "But I've known you since you were a baby. I've loved you your whole life. And I'm not going to let your mother's mistakes destroy that," Lily had cried. I'd cried. And somewhere in all those tears, we'd found a way back to each other. Marcus was harder. 14 years old, sullen and angry, convinced that his mother was being persecuted and his father was a coward for not defending her. Derek had taken both kids after Paige's arrest, but Marcus had been difficult, acting out in school, refusing to speak to anyone in the family, retreating into a shell of resentment and confusion. I tried to reach him. Cards, letters, voicemails he never returned. Each attempt met with silence, and eventually I'd had to accept that some wounds take longer to heal than others. "Give him time," Garrett had advised. "He's a kid. He doesn't understand what happened, and he's angry at the world because it's easier than being angry at his mom." Time. That's what everyone said. Time heals all wounds. Time reveals the truth. Time makes everything clearer. Maybe they were right. Maybe in a year, or 5, or 10, Marcus would understand. Maybe he'd reach out, the way Lily had, looking for connection and forgiveness. Or maybe he wouldn't. Maybe some relationships were broken beyond repair, and the best you could do was mourn what was lost and move forward with what remained. Claire and Natalie had become my anchors. My daughters, my real daughters, the ones I'd carried and birthed and raised, had stood by me through everything. Claire had flown in from Atlanta the moment she'd heard the truth, holding me while I cried and promising that we would get through this together. Natalie had taken a semester off from nursing school to stay with me during the worst of it, cooking meals I couldn't taste and sitting with me through nights I couldn't sleep. "You're the strongest person I know," Natalie had told me once, late at night when neither of us could sleep. "I don't know how you do it." "I don't feel strong," I'd admitted. "That's the thing about strength," she'd said. "It's not about feeling strong. It's about getting up every day and doing what needs to be done, even when everything inside you is screaming to give up." I thought about that a lot in the months since. Strength, resilience, the stubborn refusal to let someone else's cruelty define who you are. I'd spent 25 years being Warren's wife, being the hostess, the caretaker, the woman who kept the house running and the family together. I'd given up my career, my independence, my sense of self, all for a life that had been ripped away from me in a single evening. But I was still here, still standing, still breathing, and for the first time in longer than I could remember, I was free. Free to decide who I wanted to be, free to build a life that was entirely my own, free to plant a garden that no one could take away from me in a house that belonged to me alone. The cottage in Beaufort needed work, the garden needed tending, the shutters needed fixing, and the porch needed painting, and there were 1,000 small tasks that would fill my days for months to come. I couldn't wait to get started. "So," Diane said, interrupting my thoughts, "are you going to stand there staring at it all day? Or are you going to go inside?" I laughed, a real laugh, the kind I hadn't managed in months. "I'm going inside." "Good, because I brought champagne, and I'm not drinking it alone." We walked up the path together, my sister and I. The front steps creaked under our weight, and the door stuck a little when I turned the key. But when I stepped inside, the late afternoon light was streaming through the windows, and the air smelled like salt and possibility. On the kitchen counter, I set down the one thing I brought with me from Charleston, my mother's porcelain plate. Paige had tried to keep it, had claimed it was part of the house and therefore hers to dispose of, but Margaret had included it specifically in the settlement, one small hand-painted plate with blue flowers, of no monetary value but immense personal significance. Warren had delivered it himself, had driven the 3 hours to Diane's house, plate wrapped carefully in tissue paper, and handed it to me without a word. Then he'd stood there, on my sister's porch, looking lost and old and broken. "I found this in storage," he'd said. Paige had put it away after you left. I thought you should have it back. I'd taken the plate, held it in my hands, feeling the familiar weight of it, the smooth lace under my fingertips. Thank you, I'd said, and then I closed the door. Now, in my new kitchen, I unwrapped the plate and set it on the counter. Proof that some things endure, no matter how hard people try to take them away. Diane popped the champagne. We toasted to new beginnings, to justice served, to whatever came next. Through the window, I could see the sun setting over the water, orange and pink and gold, the same colors as 1,000 sunsets I'd watched from the Charleston mansion. But this sunset was different. This one was mine. My phone buzzed. A text from Warren. Thinking of you. Hope the new house is everything you deserve. I looked at the message for a long moment. Then I typed a reply. It is. Thank you. 3 dots appeared, then disappeared, then appeared again. Maybe I could visit sometime? See the place? I miss you, Olivia. I miss us. I set the phone down without responding. Maybe I'd answer him tomorrow, or next week, or never. The choice was mine now. Every choice was mine, and there was a strange, fragile power in that. I didn't know what would happen with Warren, whether we'd find our way back to each other, or whether too much had been broken to repair. I didn't know if I'd ever trust him again, or if I even wanted to. But I knew this. Whatever I decided, it would be my decision. Not his, not Paige's, not anyone else's. Mine. Diane raised her glass again. To you, she said. To Olivia, the survivor. I clinked my glass against hers. To starting over, I said. And for the first time in a long time, I meant it. Outside, the last light faded from the sky. Inside, my sister and I sat in my empty kitchen, drinking champagne and making plans for the future. Tomorrow, I would start unpacking. Next week, I would plant a garden. Next month, Lily was coming to visit, her first time at my new house, the first step toward rebuilding what her mother had tried to destroy. And somewhere in Charleston, in a jail cell awaiting trial, Paige Mercer Thornton was finally learning what it meant to lose everything. I wondered if she understood now, if she realized that the house she'd coveted was sold to strangers, that the inheritance she'd schemed for had gone to charity, that the family she tried to control had slipped through her fingers like sand. Probably not. People like Paige rarely saw themselves clearly. They found excuses, assigned blame, convinced themselves they were victims rather than villains. But that was her problem now, not mine. I had a house to fix, a garden to plant, a life to rebuild, and I was finally, beautifully free. The end. If you've experienced something similar, a betrayal, a family conflict, a moment when everything fell apart, I'd love to hear your story. Leave a comment below and tell me, what would you have done in Olivia's shoes? And don't forget to subscribe for more real stories from real listeners.